Hello and welcome to the Data Dice YouTube channel. Today we will talk about how to use the cast operator in BigQuery. Your saved data in BigQuery can have different data types like a string, integer, dates and many more. And we will find out how to change the data type from one to another and what are potential obstacles doing the cast operation. Before I watch this video, please check out the other videos from our free SQL course on this YouTube channel. Or go to our website, link in the description, and watch the videos there. But let's start with the cast operator now. So let's take a look into the cast operator. So let's start with a usual query, select star from. For this tutorial, we will just take the bike share trips table. I will just copy the project name, then the dataset name and the table. Select star, super easy. We can just take a look into it. We have already a working query, all good. As you know, be careful with the select star statement. Why? Because you have a lot of costs, because you're basically asking all the columns and all the rows. So just be careful with it. So yeah, the full table we have trip ID, duration sec, and so on and so on. And in one of the videos before, we already mentioned, for example, that start date and end date here is misleading. Why? Because it's not a date, it's a timestamp. So for sure you also have here the date inside, but you also have the exact timestamp on it. Due to that, at least on my opinion, I would say to give that column the start date name is not that good. I would say it's a start timestamp, just start or start TS, started at, something like that. Multiple options, but start date, end date is not that good. So this we will change, for example. So let's go through it. So which cast operations do we have? Which possibilities do we have? What do we need to think about? So let's start with the first one. So I will just take duration sec as duration sec int. Maybe before we do that, one important thing, I can also quickly search for that one. So you can just search by every table name in the BigQuery resources search. And there we have, you just need to be careful, it's San Francisco bike share, so bike share trips. And here we see in every schema of your tables and all tables you have in BigQuery, you see the type or the data type of your tables, or of your columns, sorry. So we have, for example, the trip ID, which is a string, which is, for example, already something I would recommend. Because I think the trip ID could be also an integer. Yeah, so it's at the end, it's just integers, numbers. But I would still say a trip ID should be a string. Has two reasons. First one, the trip ID is nothing you are calculating. So you are not saying, okay, I take trip ID 1 and I take trip ID 2 and multiplying them or adding them together or whatever. It's nothing you are doing with an ID, because an ID is just showing to something, or it's just say here, that's exactly this entry. Well, that's the first thing. So due to that, you don't need an integer at the end or a float value at the end, which is then a decimal number. And if, due to whatever reason, the trip ID, for example, is out of range, the system maybe starts to add characters like A, B, C, whatever, into it. And then it's not an integer anymore, it's a string then. And due to that, trip ID always doing a string, you are happy with that. Then we have integer, duration sec, which we will come to it in a second. We have the start date timestamp, which we will change. Same for start station and for end station name with string, integer and timestamp. We have the zip code, which is a string, which you also could think about, okay, why is the zip code a string? But also here, you don't calculating with it. It's a clear thing. Maybe in some countries, the zip code also have characters inside. Then all these latitude and longitude columns are in float values, also super important. And even geography data types, which we will not cover in this video. Quite a special one where you open a complete new world in SQL or BigQuery. We will not cover like that for now. So that's our starting point. So we have the duration sec as duration sec int, just to show again that it's an integer. Then we have cast duration sec as float 64 as duration sec float. And the same here, quick tip, what you can do. So we need here, comma. If you need to have the same or kind of the same value again, or the same string in one line in BigQuery, in Mac, you just can press Shift, Option, and then upwards or downwards with the arrow keys. And then you have the same row again. Yes, so we have now the same one. And here I just would like to switch to string. So let's see if that is working. So we just have these 3 columns, which are aligning all of them on the same original column on duration sec. So here you see what it's doing. So duration sec int is the one where we are doing nothing, just renaming. Then we have duration sec float. When you are changing an integer to a float, it's just adding here the 0 dot 0 at the end of the number, and that's it. Also, and we need to switch here the name, but whatever, duration sec float 1, it's the string. And at the end, it's showing exactly the same number. But what you could not do is, for example, saying, okay, plus duration sec again, or something like that. This you could not do. Why? Because then BigQuery says, I cannot do a plus operator on the 2 data types, on the 2 different data types, string and integer 64. But even if it would be 2 times string, it would be not possible. This one here, for example, works. Then the data type should be a float, if I'm not wrong. Yes. So yeah. So you basically now just double the amount of the duration sec, and it's now a float. So that's easily possible. But adding or use the plus operator on a string is not possible. Yes, so this we can just delete. And then let's continue with the next one. So then we have the start date, as I said. So this is something which always freaks me out. Start TS. So that's how you call a timestamp. So if you want to switch a timestamp to a date column, you can do it in 2 different ways. Both at the end have the same result, but there are 2 different ways how to do it. So you can do cast start date as date as start date. I just call it 1. And you can also do date and delete the rest one here. And then your start date 2. That's it. So I check it. And now you also see exactly the difference. So we still have here the start date TS. So we have the full date and then even the full timestamp with the time zone. And here you have then the first start date and the second start date. It's exactly the same. I am usually taking date, start date. I think sometimes I even use that one. There's not a real recommendation, just whatever you like. But for sure, if you say, okay, I want to cast, I'm always using a cast operator, makes total sense, whatever you like. Then we have the start station latitude. I do not want to do so much with it because it's already kind of a geography thing, but the data type is a float. As start station latitude float. So now the interesting question is, what is happening when I'm switching this one to an integer? Why you always have to write 64 has something to do with technology stuff, saving data. So it's a usual thing that you have integer 64 and float 64. There are in theory also float 32 and integer 32. Not for BigQuery, but could be in other systems the case. Whatever, just always type in integer 64 and float 64. That's it. Okay, else it does not work at the end. So let's check. We always keep also the old ones. So for the integer, it's the 38 because it's just rounding down or rounding up. In this case, it's round up the numbers of the decimal number. Maybe we also have a separate example, but due to ordering, I think it's a little bit hard because I think it's ordering by that one. But whatever, I think the idea is clear. Also, yeah, for sure we also have nulls. But I think the idea is clear. So, yes. And the last one is the zip code. Zip code as zip code string. As we saw before, the zip code is saved in a string. And as I said, I would also recommending it like that. And here I would like to do the cast to change the zip code to an integer 64. And let's see what's happening there. As zip code int. So query says it's working because there's no syntax error in the query. But it says, okay, there's a bad integer value, NIL. To be honest, I have no really idea what it is. Maybe it's a wrong formatted null or whatever. But we have values inside the zip code, which is not a full integer and not a clear null value. It's at the end just a normal string NIL. And due to that, we cannot do this zip code as int64 cast. What we can do, and this is super important, we can change the cast to a safe cast. Well, let's do it like that and let's see what happens. As it looks like it's working already. So due to the safe cast, what is the safe cast doing? The safe cast at the end tries to accomplish the cast, and if it's not successful, the corresponding column, so zip code int for that value will be null, and that's it. But your whole query is not breaking, which is super important and super relevant for all the productive models you are usually working. So always when you have a productive model, please use the safe cast, because else if you have one misformatted value in your data for today or yesterday or whatever, your whole model is not working anymore. And due to that, as you see here, it's working usually, and we can then check where zip code equals NEL. Well, let's see if that works. Yes, so here we have the entries. Yeah, and here you see it perfectly. So we have here zip codes doing NEL, NIL, whatever. And we have the zip code and null. And due to that, it's exactly what we desired. So if there is no way to change the zip code to an integer, which as I said, there's not really a use case why you should do that, but it's a good example, then it's just a null at the end. If you like to see the data types of your final table you currently have in your results, because it's not really visible in the results, you can also go, so one way, for example, is to go to the job information. And here you have a destination table, which is just a temporary table. And you can click on that. And then you have here a weird string name, whatever. It's nothing which is saved in BigQuery, at least not something visible. And here you have now all your column names you created doing your query. And here you have then also the data type. So as a usual schema with integer, float, string, timestamp, date, float, integer, string, and integer. And that's super cool if you are not sure, okay, I have now my result, but I'm not 100% sure which data type it is. I can always go to this temporary table. As you can see, the cast operator is an important part of the daily SQL business. For example, if you want to join the data of two tables, the selected keys need to have the same data type. And as shown in the video, the safe cast operator is preferred in productive models, because then the whole query does not break if a cast is not successful. But that's it. If you want to have more information about SQL in general, you can check out our blogs on Medium, posts on LinkedIn, and our website. The important links you find in the description, and then see you in the next video.